So get this, podcast listeners, CNN is in trouble. What a surprise. What a sad thing. CNN is in trouble. Why do you suppose? Well, CNN ratings are dramatically down since Trump left office, says the Insider paper. The network lost nearly 50% of its target audience during primetime hours. And here's what they say. CNN had record-breaking viewership during the final months of Trump's presidency. Gee, you wonder why, because of the impeachment and, of course, the contesting of the elections. But there has been a dramatic decline in ratings since Inauguration Day, according to new research. CNN has lost 36% of its primetime viewers since January 21st, just a few months ago. The Nielsen Media Research data said. So this is actually real data. CNN has seen ratings plummet since former President Donald Trump left the White House, according to a Fox News report on Nielsen Media Research data. The network averaged 2.5 million primetime viewers between the day after the election and November 4th, 2020, and Inauguration Day on January 20th, 2021, Fox News reported. Since President Joe Biden was sworn in, however, those numbers at CNN have dropped dramatically. An average of 1.6 million viewers tuned in during primetime hours between January 21 and March 15, Fox News said. That's a downturn of 36% since Biden took office. No wonder he's so boring. Primetime viewers also ditched CNN in the period between December 28th through to January 20th. The network hemorrhaged almost half, 49% of its primetime viewers. Fox News reported again. An average of 3.1 million primetime fell to just 1.6 million primetime viewers, the media outlet said. So, why do you suppose? Why do you suppose CNN is in trouble, podcast listeners? Well, maybe it's because of the fact that the only reason why CNN was able to engage viewers is because of the hysteria that they created over the Trump presidency, right? It's all they did. They played the race card and they played the intersectionality card and the identity politics cards. They did all of that, and that was very successful for CNN. And of course, to be fair, Donald Trump helped as well, because Donald Trump, would call on CNN and call them fake news. And that, of course, enraged the CNN viewers. And so they were engaged even more and upset even more because they were rooting for CNN to defeat Donald Trump rather than rooting for a media to actually do its job and be impartial and actually engage in real journalism. So CNN is fomenting hysteria now about Donald Trump returning. So CNN's in trouble. Viewership is down 50% almost. And now CNN has decided, well, let's foment hysteria about Donald Trump potentially returning to office. So a CNN reporter just recently, she smiled about the prospect of canceling the Republican Party. And of course, she asked Joe Biden this question. And why do you think CNN, of all questions, would ask Joe Biden, are you going to run again? I mean, the guy is just a few months into his presidency. Why would you ask someone who is a few months into his presidency, are you going to run again? I mean, a more appropriate question, if you were a real media outlet, would be, hey, it looks like you're having a difficult time keeping up with the schedule and like even holding press conferences. Are you okay? That would be a better question. But no, the CNN reporter smiles about the prospect of canceling the Republican Party because Biden refers to that when he's asked about if he's going to run again. We have a clip about this, and it's typical CNN, and here it is.
And do you believe you'll be running against former President Trump?
Oh, come on. I don't even think about it. I have no idea. I have no idea whether there'll be a Republican Party. Do you? I know you don't have to answer my question, but I mean, do you? I mean, look.
So of course, Biden's like, there's not even going to be a Republican Party. So even though the CNN reporter is wearing a mask, you can see the mask moving in such a direction as it's moving up because she looks like she's laughing and smiling because she loves that answer. Why does she love that answer? Because CNN is in trouble. They're trying to get viewership back, and the only way you can get viewership back is if you threaten the idea of either Donald Trump coming back into the Oval Office, or you talk about well, now that we've gotten rid of Donald Trump, we're going to cancel the Republican Party. We're going to make them disappear. And that gets people engaged in CNN once again and to watch the network, because it's not really a network. It's an advocacy organization that uses basically the public and private companies who endorse and provide commercials on CNN. Those individuals fund CNN, and then CNN uses that money to do what? To basically talk about one-party politics. Can you imagine America if we had one-party politics? I mean, we'd be just like China, right? You're going to have a communist party. That's exactly, I think, maybe what some want. I can't imagine why, but that's good old CNN, because, when you're in trouble, you'll do anything. By the way, AT&T owns CNN, and AT&T's been trying to sell CNN ever since Biden. Ever since Biden became president, AT&T's like, man, we need to dump this property because it's really going to lose a lot of money, because people only watched it because they hated Donald Trump, and that was CNN's mantra. And so to prove how bad CNN is, ladies and gentlemen, you won't believe this. So in Washington, D.C. over the weekend, there were 2 teenage girls. The girls lived on the border of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. They went into Washington, D.C. by Nationals Park. That's where the professional baseball team plays in Washington, D.C. And these 2 teenage girls, I think one was 15, the other I think was even a little bit younger. They actually had a stun gun, and they went over to an Uber Eats driver who was in his car. He had just gotten into his car. They stunned him and then jumped into his car, and they stunned him with the stun gun. And he, of course, wasn't completely out of the car, as you can imagine. He was just stunned. But then he was holding on, trying to stay in the car, but it was half in the car and half out. And the girls decided that they were going to basically drive off while the guy's kind of like hanging out. He wasn't dragging on the ground, just to let you know, but he was kind of standing up, trying to hold onto the steering wheel and stay into the game. And of course, they continue using the stun gun on him, and they take off in the car and accelerate. And the next thing that happens is the car turns on its side, if you can believe that. And the gentleman, of course, and it turns on its side violently. The gentleman flies off of the car, as you can imagine. It was a pretty high speed, and then lands on the concrete sidewalk. He's a grandfather, and it's just an unbelievable story. And what makes the story unbelievable is what CNN said about it and what the mayor of DC said about this, and which is why CNN is in trouble, because it's not a real network. But first, we're going to play for you the story of this gentleman, and we're going to play for you what the media said about this, and it's worth listening to before you tell you what CNN said. And here it is.
Police say the suspects, just 13 and 15 years old, were in the process of trying to steal 66-year-old Mohammed Anwar's car when one of them used a taser on him as they tried to speed off, which police say led to the deadly car crash, the car flipping over, Anwar ejected. He was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, but did not survive. The teens arrested at the scene. Anwar's loved ones calling the sudden loss immeasurable, telling ABC News the father of 3 and grandfather of 4 moved to the U.S. from Pakistan in 2014 to build a better life for himself and his family.
Of course, that's the American story, right? The gentleman came here legally, because he wanted a better life for himself and his family. And I have no doubt that he probably sacrificed and drove an Uber Eats, worked for Uber Eats, drove his own car, because that's what you do. You drive your own car for Uber Eats, just like you would do for Uber or for DoorDash. And he did that to make extra money. I have no doubt that he did so to try to improve his lifestyle, which is, of course, uniquely American. And these 2 teenage girls, after they engage in this carjacking and kill this man, they murder him. After they murder him, one of the teenage girls, as she gets out of the car and she's staggering, the other girl is staggering as well because it was a violent accident that they caused themselves. One of the teenage girls, Her concern was to look back into the car for her cell phone, which had come loose in the car when the car flipped. And so she's looking for that. She finds it, I believe, her cell phone, and then coldly walked past the victim's body as if it wasn't even there. I mean, I'm just sorry. These folks should be teenagers, underage teenagers, underage. I mean, these are minors. Minors or not, they should be put in prison for life. And they have a lifetime to think about this. But of course, if you're CNN, that's not what you think. CNN, of course, it doesn't meet their intersectional idea or their ideas about intersectionality. It doesn't meet their ideas about identity politics. And so the Washington Examiner and others slammed CNN for describing the killing of the Uber Eats driver as an accident. And so here's what happened. CNN was slammed for using the word accident in a tweet reporting on the killing of an Uber Eats driver that was reportedly carried out by 2 teenage girls. Well, it's on video, folks. This is called homicide. The man was killed during the commission of a violent crime, former New York Police Department Commissioner Bernard Kerik tweeted. His tweet was in response to a CNN post reading, "Police said the girls," okay, listen to this, folks. This is what CNN tweeted out. CNN, "Police said the girls, 13 and 15, assaulted an Uber Eats driver with a taser while carjacking him, which led to an accident in which he was fatally injured." So let me read that again. CNN, this is what they tweeted. "Police said the girls, 13 and 15, so I think before I may have said 14, so the girls are 13 and 15. Nonetheless, they're both minors. Police said the girls, 13 and 15, assaulted an Uber Eats driver with a taser while carjacking him, which led to an accident in which he was fatally injured." It's on video, ladies and gentlemen. It didn't lead to an accident. It was an intentional murder of this gentleman. They were willing to do anything to get this guy out of his car, including murdering him because they were carjacking his car. And of course, the crime resulted in a murder. And that's CNN for you. And this is considered a network, and they're wondering why people don't want to watch them. They don't take them seriously. I mean, I can imagine, I do feel bad for those Americans who watch CNN and actually think that's news, because it's not a lack of education. It's probably the opposite. I actually think many of the people that watch CNN are educated. and it just tells them, reinforces what they already believe about the world, of course. And I haven't even told you about the 2 girls. These are 2 black girls who are minors who committed this act of murder against a Pakistani immigrant. CNN never talked about that. Can you imagine if it were anything else other than what I just described, what CNN would have said? Of course, they would have immediately identified the individual's race, his gender, his age, and they would have played that game through the end. They didn't do it here, of course. In fact, it was just an accident. So Tim Dillon, the comedian, he's a very funny comedian. He decided to respond to CNN's tweet. And here's what he said. He said, "These girls made a whoopsie, like, oh, what a shame. We made a mistake." So Tim Dillon is making fun of CNN. He says, "These girls made a whoopsie when they murdered this man. Total accident. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They're good kids. Kids murder in cold blood. They make mistakes." That was perfect, right? It was perfect because it was using humor and satire against CNN to demonstrate how incredibly corrupt they are. And it's just such a shame. To me, it's such a shame that this is what CNN has become. But nonetheless, we all know this about them. And it's just not, I just don't see it getting better anytime soon. But CNN is indeed in trouble. And I'm hoping that whoever buys CNN, or if CNN does go out of business, kind of doubt they'll go out of business, but I feel like someone will buy them. I'm hoping the purchaser will reorganize CNN and actually fire their entire staff and hire people who really want to talk about and report about what happens and what has happened and report about the news. People who are real journalists. I mean, kind of makes sense to me. That is what you should do. But I have to tell you something else. It wasn't just what had happened with the 2 teenage girls. Guess what the DC mayor said? The DC mayor, unfortunately, it's not letting me see this tweet, but the DC mayor basically said, hey, look, if you don't want to get carjacked, there are 5 steps that you should take. And if you follow these 5 steps, and it's like a little video, like a PowerPoint video that you put on Twitter, if you follow these 5 steps, then you probably won't get, carjacked. In other words, she's blaming the victim for not following the 5 steps of getting carjacked. This is who is the mayor of Washington, D.C. And of course, was it reported anywhere? Not by CNN, not by MSNBC. And yet this mayor is the same mayor who wants to cancel the police, right? How do you cancel the police when you have teenagers who are out there killing people just because they think it's fun to steal his car? Well, nonetheless, CNN is in trouble.